23:17 hours, Indochina time, 13th of June, 1966, Hill 488, Heap Juk District, Quảng Tín Province. A radio squelch pops twice in the dark. 18 Marines from 1st Reconnaissance Battalion freeze on a rocky ridgeline 24 kilometers west of Chu Lai. Staff Sergeant Jimmie Howard keys the handset of his PRC-25 and whispers a grid to the Direct Air Support Center. Below the outcrops, 200 voices chant in Vietnamese. The math says this ends in minutes, but mathematics assumes both sides shoot the same way. For the next 12 hours, Howard's team proves that fire discipline and a single radio frequency matter more than head count. The squelch pops again, this time calling fire onto their own position. Military academies teach that local numerical superiority decides small unit night engagements. Force ratio models predict attrition rates. A 10-to-1 advantage in the dark collapses the defender in under an hour. Small unit manuals dedicate chapters to withdrawal under pressure. Recon teams in I Corps carry no illusions. If compromise happens, extraction choppers race the clock. Hill 488 has no reinforcements within 90 minutes. The attacking force outnumbers the Americans by at least 11-to-1, possibly more. By every field study and every tactical estimate, Howard's platoon should vanish before dawn. 1st Reconnaissance Battalion runs deep patrols across Quảng Tín and Quảng Nam provinces under 3 Marine Amphibious Force. Each team inserts by helicopter, moves on foot to high ground, and observes infiltration routes for 3 to 4 days. Howard's 18-man platoon carries M14 rifles, 2 M60 machine guns, 1 M79 grenade launcher, fragmentation grenades, and a single PRC-25 radio. The PRC-25 weighs 23 pounds with battery and handset. Its range reaches 8 kilometers line of sight in good conditions. Direct air support centers at Chu Lai and Jian'an monitor preset frequencies and hold strike aircraft on ground alert or airborne station. A-4 Skyhawks from Marine Aircraft Group 12 orbit with 500-pound bombs, napalm, and 20mm cannon. AC-47 Spooky gunships from the 4th Air Commando Squadron carry flare dispensers and minigun pods. Flares burn at 2 million candle power for 3 minutes, each suspended under parachute at 1,500 feet. Miniguns fire 6,000 rounds per minute in 5-second bursts. Tracers mark every 5th round. Marine pilots practice close air support inside published safety distances when the ground controller provides tight talk-ons and terrain permits. Fire discipline means controlled semi-automatic bursts, not full automatic panic fire. The M14 empties a 20-round magazine in 3 seconds on full auto. Aimed shots extend ammunition across hours instead of minutes. Micro-terrain, boulders, depressions, reverse slopes multiplies defensive value when defenders lie flat and shoot uphill attackers against skyline. Illumination disrupts night-adapted vision. Attackers silhouetted under flares lose concealment while defenders in shadow retain it. The PRC-25 becomes a precision weapon when the radio operator talks pilots onto map grids within meters of friendly positions. Howard's team rehearses close air support brevity codes and threat bearings during the helicopter insertion on the morning of the 13th of June. At 1400 hours Indochina time, the team digs shallow fighting positions on the northwest slope of Hill 488. The slope rises 150 meters above surrounding valleys. Tree cover stops 30 meters below the crest. By 2200 hours, trip flares encircle the position at 15-meter intervals along 3 approach ravines. The moon rises at 0130 hours. Until then, ambient light measures near zero. At 23:15 hours, a trip flare ignites on the southeast trail. 2 minutes later, the squelch pops and Howard requests immediate illumination. The first flare ignites at 23:20 hours and reveals an entire company moving uphill in assault formation. The mechanism locks into place. The PRC-25 links Howard to the sky, and the sky owns every meter of open ground. He does not call for help. He calls for fire. Not airstrikes around his position, airstrikes on his position. The first flare pops at 23:20 hours, 1,500 feet above Hill 488, and ignites 2 million candle power across the ridgeline. Howard sees 60 to 80 figures in khaki and green, spacing 5 meters apart, climbing directly toward the Marine positions. He does not give a fire command. For 11 seconds, the People's Army advance continues, troops expecting darkness now frozen under magnesium glare. At 12 seconds, Howard keys the handset and whispers range and bearing to the Direct Air Support Center net. The first M60 opens at 80 meters, aiming low into legs and torsos. The second gun joins 3 seconds later from a position 12 meters to the right. Crossfire cuts the lead element, bodies tumble, and the assault breaks left toward a ravine. Marines fire semi-automatic. 2 rounds. Shift target. 2 rounds. A second flare ignites before the first dies. Continuous illumination holds for 9 minutes. The People's Army Company reforms in the ravine and attempts a second push from the southwest at 23:37 hours. This time, an A4 arrives overhead at 12,000 feet. The pilot radios Howard for a talk-on. Howard describes a rock outcrop shaped like a broken tooth downslope. The A4 drops to 3,000 feet, rolls inverted, acquires the landmark, and inverts again into a 30-degree dive. The 500-pound bomb releases at 1,800 feet and impacts close below Howard's position. The concussion lifts dirt and rock fragments over the Marine line. Shrapnel pings off boulders. No Americans are hit. The assault collapses again. Radio intercepts later count 19 killed in the first 2 attempts. At 0002 hours Indochina time on the 14th of June, a third wave comes straight uphill from the north. No finesse, just momentum and numbers. Howard shifts the M60s to interlocking fire across a 40-meter frontage. Flares now drop every 90 seconds. The AC-47 orbits at 3,500 feet and holds the sky bright. Marines lie behind rocks no higher than their chests. Muzzle flashes stay below the skyline. Attackers climb exposed slopes outlined against white light, shooting upward at shadows. The M79 grenade launcher arcs rounds into the ravine at 200 meters. Each detonation scatters clusters attempting to regroup. Ammunition discipline holds. Riflemen count rounds remaining, call numbers to Howard, and the team redistributes magazines from wounded to unwounded. At 0027 hours, a People's Army squad reaches within meters of the northwest perimeter. Howard pulls 2 Marines back and calls the A4 again. He marks his own position with a penlight strobing Morse. 3 dots. The Skyhawk rolls in and stitches 20mm cannon fire across the slope inside the strobe. Danger close varies. Vietnam talk-ons sometimes come inside doctrine. Shells walk uphill in 5-second bursts. The squad disintegrates. 1 Marine takes shrapnel in the shoulder from a ricochet. The corpsman patches the wound without leaving his own fighting hole. By 0100 hours, 4 separate assaults have broken against the hill. Enemy casualties stack in the ravines. Marine casualties total, 1 killed in action and 6 wounded. The squelch pops again. Howard requesting more flares, more A4s, more minigun passes from Spooky. The AC-47 descends to 2,800 feet and fires 6 bursts into the southern approach. Tracers look like red rain. A People's Army Company commander, interviewed years after the war, recalls orders to overrun the hill before dawn. He states his company lost 47 men in the first hour. "We thought they were a battalion. The fire came from everywhere and the sky kept burning." The sky kept burning not because the Marines shot more, but because they shot less and called steel instead. At 0145 hours, the enemy pulls back 300 meters and regroups for a coordinated assault. Howard counts his ammunition. Each rifleman holds between 40 and 80 rounds. The M60s have 600 rounds remaining between them. The PRC-25 battery shows half charge. Not firepower holds the line, radio discipline does. At 0203 hours Indochina time, 14th of June 1966, 3 People's Army companies coordinate a simultaneous push from north, south, and east. Trip flares ignite on all 3 axes. The entire perimeter glows. Howard estimates 200 attackers moving uphill in bounds. One element fires while another advances. For the first time, the Marines face suppressive fire. AK-47s and RPD light machine guns rake the summit. Rounds crack overhead. Rock chips spray across fighting positions. The corpsman, hospital corpsman, third-class Billy Don Holmes, crawls between wounded Marines, injecting morphine and tying tourniquets without returning fire. I had 6 bleeders and no cover. I kept thinking, just don't stand up. Holmes treats a sucking chest wound with a plastic wrapper from a C-ration pack, tapes 3 sides, and leaves the 4th open for pressure release. The wounded Marine continues firing his M14 one-handed. Howard does not order return fire immediately. He watches the assault line climb within 60 meters. He keys the PRC-25 and calls a fire mission describing danger-close strikes on all 3 axes. The first A4 rolls in from the east at 0209 hours. Napalm canisters tumble from the wing pylons. The canisters impact downslope and ignite across a 70-meter front. Heat washes over the Marine line. The fireball climbs 40 meters and burns for 90 seconds. Screaming carries through the flames. The southern assault collapses into the ravine. The northern element holds position and continues firing. A second A4 arrives at 0214 hours with a 500-pound bomb and 20mm strafing. Howard talks the pilot onto a boulder cluster to the north. The bomb detonates on target. Shrapnel shreds the northern element. Survivors retreat into dead ground. The eastern assault, now isolated, reaches close to the perimeter at 0218 hours. Howard orders the M60s to fire. Controlled bursts, 3 to 5 rounds, picking individual targets. 2 Marines throw fragmentation grenades. Detonations ripple through the assault line at 4-second intervals. The eastern element breaks at 0221 hours, leaving 11 bodies close to the Marine positions. At 0230 hours, the firing stops. Silence holds for 4 minutes. Then the squelch pops. This time, a new voice on the Direct Air Support Center net. An AC-47 from the 4th Air Commando Squadron checks in on station with 45 minutes of fuel and thousands of rounds. He asked for continuous flares and minigun on his northwest slope. I asked if he wanted gun runs offset. He said, "Negative, walk it to my strobe." The pilot orbits at 3,000 feet. His loadmaster pushes flares every 60 seconds. The minigun fires in 3-second bursts, thousands of rounds per minute downrange, tracers converging on coordinates. Howard adjusts in real time. Each burst walks meters closer to the Marine perimeter. The final burst passes close to Howard's position. Enemy troops attempting to regroup in the northwest ravine scatter under the Red Stream. By 0315 hours, the coordinated assault has cost the attackers more than 90 casualties. Marine losses now total 3 killed in action and 13 wounded. 5 men still fight unwounded. Howard redistributes ammunition. Again, riflemen down to 20 rounds each, M60s to 400 rounds total. The PRC-25 battery reads 1/4 charge. Howard switches to a spare BA series battery and conserves transmission time. At 0342 hours, a 4th assault forms, smaller, probing, testing for weak points. Howard orders no fire until targets close within 30 meters. The probe reaches 35 meters and stops. Silhouettes visible under flare light, but not advancing. Marines hold fire. At 40 seconds, the probe withdraws. Not because the Marines broke them with bullets, but because silence suggested strength, and the radio promised fire from the sky. At 04:25 hours, Indochina time, 14th of June, 1966, Howard counts 12 Marines still capable of firing a weapon. 3 more have died from wounds. The corpsman works on 2 others with arterial bleeding. Each rifleman holds between 8 and 30 rounds. The M60s share under 300 rounds between 2 guns. The PRC-25 spare battery shows 20 minutes of transmission time remaining. Enemy forces mass again in the ravines. Radio intercepts suggest a final push before dawn. Howard gathers his team leaders and delivers a single instruction: no full auto, no grenades unless they reach 10 meters. Save everything for the last rush. At 04:41 hours, the enemy launches a 5th assault, this time from all 4 quadrants simultaneously. Flares illuminate 150 attackers climbing in short bounds, using cover, moving with discipline. Howard waits until the lead elements reach within 50 meters before keying the handset. He does not call for airstrikes. He calls for illumination only, continuous flares, no gun runs, no bombs. The AC-47 complies. Flares drop every 45 seconds, holding the hillside in harsh white light. At 04:46 hours, the assault closes to 40 meters. Howard whispers a single word: fire. 2 M60s open at a cyclic rate well below the gun's maximum. Gunners aim at legs, firing 2-round bursts, pausing 3 seconds, firing again. Riflemen shoot semi-automatic, 1 round per trigger pull, selecting targets silhouetted against flare light. The M79 grenade launcher fires its last 4 rounds into clusters forming at 80 meters. No tracers arc wildly into the sky. No magazines dump in panic. Each bullet counts, each bullet hits, and the assault slows. Enemy troops go to ground at 35 meters. Some return fire, most seek cover. At 04:53 hours, the attackers attempt to maneuver left, flanking toward the northwest perimeter. Howard shifts 1 M60 to cover the new axis. The gun fires 18 rounds and stops the movement. The assault stalls at 30 meters, close enough to throw grenades, too exposed to advance. For 6 minutes, neither side moves. Flares continue dropping. The hillside remains lit. At 05:01 hours, a whistle signals withdrawal. The assault melts back into the ravines. Marines hold fire and let them go. Ammunition check at 05:05 hours. Riflemen hold between 4 and 15 rounds each. M60s have under 100 rounds total. The PRC-25 battery dies at 05:12 hours. Howard switches to the primary battery, now recharged to 40%. He calls the Direct Air Support Center and reports status. 18 started, 6 Echo Kilo India Alpha, remaining effective but ammo critical. Request resupply and medivac at first light. The controller copies and relays to 3 Marine Amphibious Force operations at Chu Lai. At 05:38 hours, the sky lightens to gray. The moon sets behind the western ridges. At 06:04 hours, 2 UH-34 helicopters launch from Chu Lai with ammunition, water, and plasma. At 06:19 hours, enemy mortar fire begins impacting the summit, 12 rounds in 3 minutes. The helicopters abort approach. Medevac postponed until ground fire suppressed. Howard calls for A4 strikes on the mortar positions, estimated 400 meters south-southwest. 2 Skyhawks roll in at 06:27 hours with 2 50-pound bombs and rockets. The mortars fall silent after the second pass. At 06:41 hours, the UH-34s return and hover at 10 feet. Marines load wounded under rotor wash and incoming small arms fire. 1 helicopter takes 3 hits in the tail boom but clears the ridge. Ammunition crates tumble onto the rocks. Marines crack them open and reload magazines. At 06:58 hours, a relief company from 2nd Battalion, 5th Marines begins climbing the southern slope. Howard's team, now resupplied, holds the perimeter for another 6 hours until the relief force arrives. not because they shot more, but because they shot less, and made every round, every call, every second of radio time count. At 14:47 hours Indochina time, 14th of June 1966, Company C, 2nd Battalion, 5th Marines reaches the summit of Hill 488. A captain leads 112 Marines up the southern slope, supported by 81mm mortar fire from a fire base 6 kilometers east. The relief commander expects to find few survivors. He finds 12 Marines standing, weapons ready, and Staff Sergeant Howard on the radio coordinating A4 strikes on retreating enemy forces. They looked like they'd been through a meat grinder, but they were still running the show. Howard was calling air like it was a training exercise. The relief company establishes a defensive perimeter and begins casualty collection. 6 Marines lie dead. Corporal Richard Tabor, Lance Corporal Ricardo Binns, Private First Class Joseph Kosoglos, Lance Corporal John Adams, Private First Class Ignatius Carlisi Jr., and Corporal Jimmy Rates. 13 others carry wounds, gunshots, shrapnel, lacerations, burns. Every man who survived took at least one hit. Holmes, the corpsman, has treated 19 separate wounds across 13 Marines using supplies intended for 6 casualties. Outside the Marine perimeter, the relief company counts bodies. The first sweep finds 43 enemy dead close to the fighting positions. A second sweep extends outward and adds 39 more. Blood trails lead into the ravines. Drag marks suggest wounded carried away under cover. Weapons recovery includes 17 AK-47 rifles, 4 RPD light machine guns, 22 Chinese Communist stick grenades, and 1 RPG-2 launcher with 3 rockets unfired. Document recovery yields a company roster listing 141 names, a patrol order dated the 12th of June, and a sketch map marking Hill 488 with the notation Mai 18 Angoi, Americans 18 people. The enemy knew exactly how many Marines held the hill before the first assault. Ammunition expenditure count from Marine positions: roughly 3,000 M14 rounds fired, roughly 1,700 M60 rounds fired, over 40 M79 grenades launched, over 70 fragmentation grenades thrown, approximately 3,000 rifle rounds over 12 hours. Restraint equals survival. Against an estimated 200 to 400 attackers over 12 hours, the rate of fire averages 1 round every 15 seconds across all weapons. Analysts at Chu Lai compare the figures to other small unit engagements in Quảng Tín Province during June 1966. Average ammunition expenditure for overrun positions runs several times higher in far shorter durations. Hill 488's rate sits at a fraction of that level, spread across many more hours. The difference lies not in marksmanship, but in fire control. Howard's team shot when targets appeared, not when fear dictated. At 15:20 hours, medevac helicopters land on the summit, wounded load in order of severity. Howard refuses evacuation until all his men lift off. At 15:47 hours, the last UH-34 departs with Howard aboard. He carries the PRC-25 handset in his lap. Post-battle intelligence reports from 30 Marine Amphibious Force estimate enemy losses at 89 confirmed dead, over 130 wounded. Captured documents later reveal the attacking force consisted of companies from the 1st Viet Cong Regiment and local People's Army elements. A company commander interviewed after the war states his regiment withdrew from the Hip Juk area for 3 weeks to reconstitute. We never found their machine guns during the fight. We thought they had 8 or 10. They had 2. The Marines made 2 guns sound like 10 by moving them, spacing bursts, and letting silence do the work between shots. On the 21st of August, 1967, President Lyndon Johnson presents the Medal of Honor to Staff Sergeant Jimmie Howard at the White House. The citation reads, "For conspicuous gallantry and intrepidity at the risk of his life above and beyond the call of duty." It does not mention the PRC-25. It does not mention fire, discipline, It does not mention the A4 pilots who rolled inside doctrine distances, or the AC-47 crew who burned flares until their loadmaster ran dry. It mentions leadership, courage, and devotion. Those qualities mattered. But the radios, the restraint, and the refusal to waste ammunition mattered more. Numbers did not decide Hill 488. Discipline did. Not the courage to shoot, but the discipline to wait, call, and let the sky finish the math. 300 kilometers north, Marine planners at the 13th Marine Amphibious Force Headquarters study the Hill 488 after-action report and highlight one number: roughly 3,000 rifle rounds across 12 hours. Doctrine predicted ammunition exhaustion within 90 minutes against a force this size. Howard's team proved doctrine wrong not by carrying more bullets, but by firing fewer. The question becomes, does this scale, or did Hill 488 survive on luck? The answer lies in what the PRC-25 made possible: not firepower, but precision. On the 22nd of June 1966, 8 days after Hill 488, Headquarters Marine Corps issues Fleet Marine Force Pacific Bulletin on lessons learned from small unit night defense. The document runs 14 pages and dedicates 5 to ammunition discipline and close air support coordination. One paragraph mandates continuous radio contact with direct air support centers during hours of darkness in high-threat areas. Another mandates backup batteries and charging capability for all recon platoons. Prior to Hill 488, recon teams carried radios for extraction calls and intelligence reports, not for directing airstrikes. After Hill 488, the radio becomes a weapon system. 13th Marine Amphibious Force operational reports from July through December 1966 document 47 additional small unit actions in Quảng Nam, Quảng Tín, and Quảng Ngãi provinces. 18 involved recon teams compromised by superior forces at night. 15 of those 18 survive with fewer than 30% casualties. All 15 called danger close air support using PRC-25 nets. The 3 overrun teams share one common factor: radio failure or enemy jamming before close air support arrival. Casualty rates in the surviving engagements average 22%. Casualty rates in overrun engagements average over 90%. The data forces a doctrinal reckoning. Small units don't survive superior numbers by shooting faster. They survive by calling steel. On the 14th of September 1966, 3rd Marine Amphibious Force establishes the Tactical Air Control School at Chu Lai, training Marine Infantry Squad leaders in close air support, brevity codes, and talk-on procedures. By December, every rifle company in I Corps has at least one forward air controller, qualified non-commissioned officer per platoon. Marine Aircraft Group 12 rewrites its close air support response doctrine. Time from initial call to first ordnance on target drops from 18 minutes to 9. The shift matters most at night, when compromised patrols measure survival in minutes. Between January and June 1967, recon teams in I Corps call over 300 danger-close air strikes. Most result in enemy withdrawal, with friendly casualties under 20%. Close air support availability increases. Night overruns decrease according to unit reports. The Hill 488 model: hold, illuminate, call fire, conserve ammunition, becomes standard training for every Marine deploying to 13th Marine Amphibious Force. Meanwhile, the United States Air Force studies the AC-47 performance data from the 13th to 14th of June 1966. Mission reports log thousands of rounds expended, over 80 flares dropped, and nearly 5 hours on station. Post-strike reconnaissance credits minigun passes with dozens of confirmed enemy casualties and the disruption of at least 2 coordinated assaults. The 4th Air Commando Squadron analyzes the mission profile and identifies 3 factors: continuous illumination, real-time adjustment via ground radio, and high-orbit time enabled by proximity to Chu Lai. In August 1966, the Air Force expands AC-47 coverage across I Corps, adding 6 aircraft to the Jian'an and Pleiku rotations. By November, spooky call signs orbit every major Marine and Army firebase from the demilitarized zone to Kontum. The number of night overruns in I Corps drops from 12 in the first half of 1966 to 3 in the second half. Close air support sorties in I Corps increased from 4,200 in June 1966 to 6,800 in December 1966, a surge driven largely by recon-initiated calls. Ammunition expenditure per sortie, however, decreases. Average rounds per close air support mission drop significantly between May and December. Precision matters more than volume. Radios make precision possible. The PRC-25 itself undergoes field modifications based on Hill 488 feedback. Engineers extend battery life and reduce handset weight. By mid-1967, every infantry platoon in Vietnam carries at least 2 PRC-25 radios, one for command, one for fires. The perception shift reaches beyond Vietnam. At the Army Infantry School, Fort Benning, instructors revise night defense scenarios to emphasize communication over firepower. A training circular states, "The platoon radio operator is the second most important man in a night engagement. The first is the platoon leader who knows how to use him." The phrase "danger close" enters common infantry vocabulary. Before Hill 488, the term existed in doctrine but rarely in practice. After Hill 488, calling fire inside published distances becomes possible when terrain and training align. On the 13th of June 1968, exactly 2 years after Hill 488, the Marine Corps Gazette publishes an article on radios, restraint, and reconnaissance. The article opens with a hypothetical. 18 men face 200 attackers in the dark. What decides the outcome? Before Hill 488, the answer was luck. After Hill 488, the answer was preparation and a radio net. The broader perception shift touches public understanding, though slowly. Press coverage of Hill 488 focuses on the Medal of Honor, the courage, the 6 dead Marines. Few articles mention the PRC-25. But within the military, the story spreads differently, through after-action reviews, training briefs, and the quiet conversations of officers who read the reports and realize what changed. What changed was this. Small units stopped treating themselves as expendable speed bumps and started treating themselves as fire control platforms. The radio made that possible. Close air support made it lethal. Fire discipline made it sustainable. Hill 488 proved that 18 men could hold against 200, not by becoming 200, but by making 200 climb into a kill zone shaped by radios and restraint. By 1969, United States casualty rates in small unit night engagements drop 40% compared to 1965 levels. The drop correlates directly with increased close air support availability and improved radio coordination. Tactical innovations matter, but perception shifts matter more, because perception changes what leaders prepare for, what troops train for, and what becomes possible when doctrine stops assuming numbers decide everything. The squelch pop becomes a symbol, not of desperation, but of precision, not calling for help, but calling fire. People ask what saved us. I tell them, the radios. We never had more firepower than they did. We had better radios. Howard understates his own leadership, but the point holds. Hill 488 flipped the equation. Communication became firepower. Fire discipline became a force multiplier. The PRC-25, a 23-pound radio, outweighed 200 rifles because it connected 18 Marines to the sky, and the sky owned the night. Military academies still teach force ratios and attrition models, but they also teach Hill 488, and Hill 488 teaches that math has a radio frequency. When you control the frequency, you control the outcome, not by shooting more, by calling better, by waiting longer, by making every bullet count and every airstrike matter. 18 Marines held a hill for 12 hours because they refused to fight the enemy's fight. They made the enemy fight theirs, and their fight included A4s, AC-47s, flares, and a single PRC-25 net that turned a desperate defense into a coordinated kill zone. The perception broke on Hill 488. Numbers don't decide night battles. Radios do. Staff Sergeant Jimmie Howard recovers from his wounds at the Naval Hospital in Da Nang and returns to the United States in August 1966. He receives the Medal of Honor on the 21st of August 1967 and retires from the Marine Corps in 1977 as a first sergeant. He dies on the 12th of November 1993 in San Diego, California. Arlington National Cemetery holds his funeral with full honors. 5 of the surviving Marines from Hill 488 received the Navy Cross. 8 received Silver Stars. Corpsman Billy Don Holmes receives the Navy Cross for treating 19 wounds under fire without a break for 12 hours. Hill 488 remains in Marine Corps memory as one of the defining small unit actions of the Vietnam War. The 1st Reconnaissance Battalion commemorates the 13th to 14th of June annually. The hill itself holds no marker. The PRC-25 radio remains in United States military service until 1985, when newer systems replace it. Over 19 years, more than 1 million PRC-25 units deployed to Southeast Asia, Korea, and Germany. The radio's success stems not from technical sophistication. More advanced systems exist by 1966, but from reliability, simplicity, and range. A Marine with 2 weeks of training can call fire missions accurately. That accessibility matters more than any advanced feature. Close air support doctrine evolves continuously after Hill 488, but the core lesson endures. Communication and restraint multiply lethality. In Iraq and Afghanistan, forward observers and joint terminal attack controllers carry encrypted digital radios with GPS-guided munitions on call. The technology changes, the principle does not. Small units survive superior numbers by linking to assets the enemy cannot match and by refusing to waste resources on panic fire. The Hill 488 after-action report circulates through Marine Corps professional education for decades. Officer candidates at Quantico study the ammunition discipline. Non-commissioned officer schools emphasize the close air support coordination. The squelch pop, that tiny static-filled sound, becomes shorthand for a larger idea. The radio is a weapon, and the operator is a gunner. No historian calls Hill 488 a turning point in the Vietnam War. The war grinds on for 9 more years. American forces withdraw in 1973. Saigon falls in 1975. But within the smaller world of infantry tactics, Hill 488 turns everything. It proves that force ratios lie when one side controls the vertical dimension. It proves that fire discipline extends combat power further than fire volume. It proves that 18 men can hold against 200 if those 18 men have a radio, a plan, and the discipline to execute under pressure. The lesson outlives the war. The lesson outlives the radio. Numbers predict outcomes only when both sides follow the same rules. Hill 488 rewrote the rules. Fire discipline and a single radio frequency beat numerical superiority. 18 Marines held for 12 hours, not because they shot faster, but because they called better and waited longer. The squelch pop mattered more than the magazine count. Discipline and radios beat numbers in the dark.